Okay, thank you. Awesome.
What is happening, everybody? It is the final MLB Live Before Lock that Eric and I'll be doing together for about a week. Well, actually, exactly a week, because Saturday, Sunday, that's the week. And then Monday, it starts the All-Star break. There's going to be no baseball games Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And then we've got to, Fridays when baseball comes back. So hopefully we have a good slate today. We head into the weekend. We get some days off to hang out a little bit. All we're going to ask of you guys as you're watching here is to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you do want to support the channel, like somebody like Chris Williams just gifted out 5 YouTube memberships, you can leave us a super chat. You get signed up for any of the packages we have at Stokastic.com, which comes with access to our Discord channel by signing up using one of those links below in the YouTube description box. If you got questions for us and you're an existing sub, you could also hit us up in that Discord channel. But let's get to it, Eric. Big slate today. Yesterday, the Seattle Mariners ended up coming through big for me late. I fucked up my CSV, but it didn't matter because the Mariners made it a positive night for me anyway. How are you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, I ended up on a lot more Mariners. We talked through that spot yesterday. Had a couple of lineups that were looking really, really good. But the obvious thing, Shane Baz had him in 40% of my lineups. He was my highest owned pitcher, trying to make a pretty large stand there. Only 68 pitches for really no reason. So that was not appreciated in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I mean, neither him nor Cortez were pitching particularly well anyway. So I don't know that Shane Baz throwing another 25 pitches or whatever was going to even be anything great for us. But I mean, the Mariners, I had 40% Mariners stacks yesterday. They were great. The one thing I really screwed up, though, is the Mariners lineup came out post-lock and it was different than what we expected. So I was like, all right, got to rerun everything. Go and did that. Go upload the CSV. Then right before the game starts, I'm looking at my line. It's like, why do I have Mitch Garver in lineups? And then it dawned on me. It was like, oh no, I have the wrong CSV uploaded. Oh, no. So I really quickly global swapped Mitch Garver to Gabriel Moreno. And then I just had still Victor Robles as well as Dylan Moore in some lineup. So I was watching the game. I was like, boy, if they keep scoring runs, Dylan Moore and Victor Robles, they're going to come in as pinch hitters. Maybe they get to face a position player pitcher at the end of the game. They did come into the game, but didn't score any fantasy points. So I ended up being profitable last night, even though I had a bunch of players that didn't start for the Mariners yesterday because the other guys scored a bunch of fantasy points. So that was definitely an error on my part, but they came through, which ended up being good overall. And I see Chris Williams also benefited because Chris says, great call on the Mariners. He left us a super chat, and he says he got 6th in the $15 night slate. And he says that there are some Muppets that love to call us out when the players don't work, but he likes to highlight when they do. So thanks, guys. And thank you as always, Chris, for supporting the channel here and all the content we do. Chris has always been a regular around here. Also, any big plans for the All-Star break, Eric?
For the All-Star break? No, I'm going to do a Lindy's video for the All-Star game. It's been crazy. So I'm pulling back up my betting results from last season because it was awesome. Oh yeah, Elias Diaz hit a plus 1,600 home run. Catchers in the All-Star game confirmed a thing, throwing it out there for the people. So bet those. There's only a few of them, and you can run into some extra innings from time to time. I believe Elias Diaz actually ended up winning he won the All-Star game MVP for that game as a result of a pinch hit home run. But feel pretty good about my All-Star analysis the last couple of years. We're going to keep that rolling. But otherwise, yeah, it'll be pretty chill week. Probably just still be in meetings, still be kicking it for the most part. You have anything fun planned?
Not too much. I'll be spending some time with my grandma. She's in a rehab facility, not because of a drug problem, but because she fell and broke her pelvis. So she lives down in South Jersey, but we got her moved into a rehab facility near my house. So I have some time to go hang out with her. So that'll be something good to keep her some company. And then beyond that, I'll be writing some articles for the site, working on some like evergreen content on how to use different tools. Maybe I'll play a little bit of golf and weathering the heat because it's 1 billion degrees here every day now.
There you go. Yeah, the Best Ball channel now officially live over on X as well. You guys can go follow that. I'm sure I'll get some best ball drafts in. I have how many? I know I'm over 100 now over on Underdog, on DK. Yeah, I've got like 200 and something bucks in best ball entry fees over there so far. So I'm just getting started over on DK. But Matt Kajeski has free rankings. If you're looking for something fun to do over the break, staying involved, go ahead and get some of those best ball drafts fired up in the NFL streets. Free rankings over at Stokastic.
Let's start breaking down this slate. Before we get into the individual players, any overarching thoughts, anything particular about this slate that you want to point out? And you don't have to, but anything in particular that stands out to you before we start talking about pitching?
No, I think that there's some contrarian stacks I like a lot.
One thing that is interesting, which we'll get to at pitching here, there is nobody pulling any ownership below 8K today. Everybody that is ownership, it's one of the, a little bit more expensive pitchers. And that's where we're going to start here. Pay up options 9K or above. We've got one really popular option. It's Freddie Peralta. He is 33% owned at $9,700. Gerrit Cole, he's contrarian, 4% owned at $9,200. You got Joe Ryan at $9,800, 20% owned against the Giants. Sonny Gray is 19% owned against the Cubs. Garrett Crochet is 19% owned against the Pirates. So you've got Crochet, Gray, and Ryan all pulling about the same ownership. Freddie Peralta is a little bit more popular. And then Cole is your contrarian pitching option there. Who do you like the most of the pay-up pitchers?
Yeah, I just ran some of my stuff here, and it looks as though Freddie Peralta is going to be the guy that I'm pulling the most of up top. I bet that holds. Garrett Crochet, somebody that I'm not really getting to right now, and that's so surprising against Pittsburgh. And then Sonny Gray, I'm about at the field on. Joe Ryan, I'm about at the field on. But Freddie Peralta is in 36% of my lineups. Let me double check and make sure that I didn't just say that. Top 150. Yeah, he's in 36% of my top 150. And I just think against Washington, sub 10K for him, he's going to probably pitch pretty deep into this one. You saw a lot of bullpen activity in that ridiculous Paul Skeens situation there yesterday. They both utilized some of the better bullpen arms as it was a close baseball game coming down to the end of it. Unbelievable outing there by him. But I feel pretty good about Freddie Peralta there against Washington, and it appears the Sims tool does too.
Yeah, and it does really help as well. Freddie Peralta a little bit less expensive than those other guys. That's something that matters at least a little bit pitching at home against the Washington Nationals. I also get to him the most. And then, we've also got him. It's not just that he's cheaper. We have the best projection on him of any pitcher on the entire, I was going to say of any of the pay-up options, but of any pitcher, period. We have Freddie Peralta projected the best today against the Washington Nationals. We have him with a 22.5% chance. It's one of the top scoring pitchers. The only other pitcher that's north of a 20% chance, it's Sonny Gray. He's slightly behind at a 20.5% chance, but he's also $500 more expensive while also having that lower odds being a top scoring pitcher. So Freddie Peralta, you're getting a price discount. You're also getting better projection. You're getting a little bit easier of a matchup as well compared to somebody like Sonny Gray who's going up against the Cubs. Even like Crochet's matchup against the Pirates. I think the Nationals are a more difficult matchup than one against the Pirates. And then I'm sure a lot of people are a little scared too about the form of Crochet, considering how poorly he pitched in a great matchup against the Marlins his last time out. So to me, Freddie Peralta is pretty clearly the option in terms of my favorite overall spend up, and also who I think you want to be playing in cash games if you're rostering a spend up pitcher.
I 100% agree.
We've got Sean Jeezy saying, hey friends, combing through the data, nothing really stands out to me stack wise. When things are pretty flat like that, what metrics do you look at to find the stacks you think have winning upside? So here's something I've been looking a lot at recently, Sean, and you don't actually have to make big stands anywhere at baseball because a lot of the field just flat out doesn't stack. So one thing you'll actually see a lot of top end players doing pretty regularly in MLB DFS, there are a lot of people that are very successful at MLB that actually don't have their exposures that much different than the field. They'll kind of be aligned with the field on a lot of their offense exposures. Pitching, it'll be a little bit more geared towards the spend up pitchers, and then pretty flat with their offenses, stacks, individual hitters, and all of that. And then the edge becomes just that you have better lineup construction what the field has. You don't have to make any kinds of crazy stands in large field tournaments. Obviously, for single entry, you're only playing one lineup, so you have to make some sort of stand there. And we did get a question from Easy Denobi about how I pick my single entry stack, which I will talk about in a second as well using the Sims. But yeah, Sean, I don't think you have to have any kind of big stand at offense. Like sometimes I will. I have the most exposure to the Miami Marlins today of any individual team because of the salary savings they bring and how important I think it is to spend up at pitching. But a lot of slates, I will have kind of spread out exposure at offense if I don't have any real particular stands. For yourself, Eric, do you feel you have to make stands on every slate at offense?
No, I don't feel like I have to. I do think that, you go back through a lot of these top players lineups as you're talking about. We go to the post contest sims and you look at the top 150 players, you look at the lineups with the top ROI sims coming back, and there are generally going to be some lower owned stacks to be getting a gauge on. This might sound weird, but something that I traditionally have done the last couple of years, or a long time ago, is something I kind of picked up on. But you see a lot of these West Coast games see some type of reduced ownership. And even yesterday, as we talked through the Seattle spot and we had some of the projected ownership, because the lineup wasn't out yet, people didn't play it because it's on the West Coast and there aren't as many high profile ballparks where you're going to see high implied run totals. We see some of those stacks come in a little bit underutilized. And Greg does a lot of the recaps for the post-contest sims, look at some of the lower owned stacks. Gotta say, something that seems like a little bit of a trend there is that it's a lot of the lineups you're not talking about a ton on the show. Like, we do have the ones that end up in like our highest owned one. I'm with Greg, where I think the ownership share going in on Miami, it's pretty difficult to pass up. And we'll get into something on pick 6 that I think is a huge edge for today. But I think from a stacking perspective, you do want to just focus on the roster construction and having primarily the 5-mans, because those still seem as though like the field is not playing enough of them relative to their success rate.
Yeah, you don't have to take any stands. I mean, I have one particular one for today. Sean mentioned before, it's the Miami Marlins. Probably not going to be playing them in single entry though. And we did get that question from Easy Denobi, who I think that's how the YouTube handle is pronounced. If that's a real name, apologies if I got it wrong. If that's a fake name, well, how can you pronounce a fake name wrong? But Easy asked, guys, how do you use the sim tools for your single entry lineups? I use it in coordination with the top stacks tool. So I'll look at the top stacks tool and I kind of make some assumptions about ownership. And it's generally that in those smaller field, higher dollar tournaments, or even if it's like the $12 single entry or something like that, I'm usually assuming that the most popular offenses are going to be anywhere from 2 to 1.5x their projected ownership. And then everything else just kind of ends up being unowned. So what I'm often doing is I'll look at my exposures in the sims. I'll look at my stack exposures, which if you go to your exposures page, then you toggle on where it says stacks. Actually, Jordan, would you mind doing that right now on screen to show the people see where we have the player exposures, and then turn on where it says stack exposure on the right? Yeah. So you can see here, then sort by 5-man stack exposures. So I'll look at this and I'll look at which teams I have the most exposure to, and then I'll compare it to what the projected ownership is in the top stacks tool. Well, you see we've got 2 teams that are expected to pull the most ownership today: the Cincinnati Reds, the Miami Marlins in the top stacks tool. Reds projected for 9.8% ownership, Marlins 9.2. So I'm going to assume those are the 2 most popular teams, each probably coming in somewhere around 15% owned as a stack in single entry. Then I'll look at the Sims tool and I'll see like, okay, if this was my set of lineups right here, you'll see that we got the most of Milwaukee, St. Louis, Cincinnati, KC. I'll first look to see, are there any teams I'm really heavily exposed to against a pitcher that's going to be really popular? Because that's usually a good way to get leverage in single entry. If yes, I'll play that team. If no, I'll look for the team that I have the most exposure to that's expected to be the lowest owned, and that's where I run in single entry. So using this set of lineups that Jordan had built right here, we got the most of Milwaukee. And then I'll go look at the top stacks tool and I'll see Milwaukee as a team is only projected for... Let's see, where's Milwaukee? Oh, here they are. Milwaukee project for 4.9% ownership as a team, or 5.2%. I don't have the latest run of ownership refreshed here. So I would look at that and I'd say, hey, Milwaukee, not expect to be all that popular. I'm getting to them a lot in the Sims tool. That's the team I want to be on for single entry. So that's usually my process. Anything you do particularly different, Eric?
There's a couple of spots where I'm generally looking for a lower owned offense. I'm looking at the ownership share on certain guys. Yesterday, not going to say it's an exception, but like both ended up on Seattle once we discussed through what it is that needed to happen in order for that kid to have any success. And we basically came to the conclusion he wouldn't. I ended up on Seattle on the run line, ended up shorting his strikeout prop at 4.5, which was just asinine in hindsight as well. I think he had 1 for the game in 3 innings, but I'm looking for leverage. I'm looking at the positive leverage that exists in the top stacks tool. And it's ironic because the most positively leveraged we have on DK right now is the team that if you had just told me to eyeball it based on ownership, that I would have landed on for single entry as is. It's the Atlanta Braves. I'm going to be playing them a lot more than the field is.
All right. So Eric liking the Atlanta Braves. He's looking at the top stacks tool, looking for the leverage there. But yeah, I mean, easy also. I mean, if you have the Sims tool, you also could access the top stacks tool. So Eric and I do it a little bit differently, but both ways are totally sensible to me. We also got a question from Hey, I'm Drew 95 in the Discord channel. He wants to know, what are we looking at for cash plays today? And we talked about the high end pitchers, Eric. Now we're also going to have to talk about these mid range pitchers, and it's going to help answer the question from Hey, I'm Drew 95 here, where if you look at the next range of pitchers in this 8K range, there's a lot more chalk here as well. So Brian Wu at $8,700. Yep. He's only projected for 0.5% ownership. It stands to reason he's going to be somewhat limited today. Makes it hard to really get there. The other pitchers here, though, Sean Manaea, 36% owned against the Rockies. Cole Reagans, he is 37% owned against the Boston Red Sox. Then you got Hunter Brown, 17% owned against the Rangers. And then when we get to the cheaper pitchers, we're up in a little bit, nobody owned there. So for cash games, we talked about really liking Freddie Peralta, but then we've also got a lot of chalk on Sean Manaea as well as Cole Reagans. Of these three pitchers, or unless there's somebody else you'd include as well, which two do you think we want to be playing for cash games?
Cole Reagans is going to be one. Hunter Brown would be the other if you made me go into this range and pick out somebody else. It would not be Manaea at 35.6% ownership. I do not like it nearly as much as the field does. I get the Colorado sensibilities there. You also got, was it Nolan Jones that ended up getting scratched out of that lineup? You end up inserting, I have to update that. I forgot to update that. Anyway, I will get that covered here as we're talking about it. But 39% Cole Reagans, I just feel pretty comfortable about getting to that number here. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. He gets a Boston lineup in a Fenway Park that is not ideal for sure, but the talent level is just so much higher. And I just feel so much better in a cash game sense getting to him as chalk than a chalky Sean Manaea, even against Colorado, which is a little bit surprising to me. Now, the first run of Sims I did get 28% Sean Manaea, so I'm not shorting him in some extreme way. He does have nearly a run lower implied team total there, but the strikeout stuff that you get for Reagans, I think is just exponentially better. We have a higher top 2 percentage on him as well. I think Freddie Peralta plus Cole Reagans would be the way I'd play cash today.
Yeah, I'm going to say Freddie Peralta and Sean Manaea, just because the matchup is so easy against the Rockies. As good as Reagans has been this year, I definitely have a little bit of reservations for cash games, at least, playing him on the road in Boston. I think there's more blow-up risk of him just getting shelled again. Not this is the most likely scenario, but I think it's more likely that Reagans gets shelled against the Red Sox and say Manaea gets shelled against the Rockies.
That's probably fair. That's probably fair.
For cash games, I care more about the floor. So I'm going to say Peralta, Manaea from that standpoint. But I don't really think you could go wrong with any two of those three pitchers. That's just the way that I personally would be approaching cash games today. It's just that Red Sox matchup. It's a lot more scary to me, and also him pitching on the road than say like Sean Manaea at home against Colorado or Freddie Peralta at home against Washington. And then people might want to say like, hey, Crochet should have some sort of a floor. Keep in mind, though, he also has a pretty restrictive pitch count today against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So that's something else that I think really, really makes him both risky for cash games and then also lowers the ceiling for GPPs. So just Crochet, somebody I'm not all that interested in general for cash games or tournaments. But what about the other pitchers in this range, Eric? Nobody playing Brian Wu, which I totally understand that. How about Hunter Brown, though? 17% owned. Are you going to be at the field, overweight, underweight? Because you kind of indicated you might like him.
I'm over the field on him. I do think that this is a spot where Texas has some value from a betting perspective, but Hunter Brown gets to go up against a Texas team that's been, I would say, surprisingly bad against right-handed pitching the entire season. Just a 19.8% K rate, but a 94 WRC plus. And you look at today's situation that you have before him here, you get by Corey Seager, you get by some of these scary spots. And I think overall it could end up being a pretty good strikeout upside for him, just because of what we've seen from him of late. He has been such a better pitcher over the last month and a half, 2 months. Does it feel good coming off of getting completely shelled in Minnesota against my Minnesota Twins? No, it probably doesn't. But before that, 4 hits he had allowed in his 2 previous outings against Toronto and Colorado. And Minnesota, they've been one of the better hitting teams in baseball over the last month for whatever reason. So the way I look at it is Hunter Brown, if you're going to get lower ownership on him against a team that I would say his floor is pretty high against based on what we've seen from Texas this entire season, I think from a DFS perspective, I'm interested.
Yeah, and yeah, some people in chat have brought it up as well. San Diego Padres did change their starting pitcher. It's no longer Randy Vasquez starting. It is Matt Waldron, who's going to be on the mound for the San Diego Padres. So we got Matt Waldron at $8,600 now starting for San Diego.
Oh,
so
I want to play him. Oh, yeah. Matt Waldron's good. Knuckleball, too. I love getting a knuckleballer just randomly thrown in there when you're not expecting it. How many times do you see a knuckleballer over the course of this season? And Atlanta has a crazy high strikeout rate against righties. Let me grab everything here, bringing this over. 24.3% K rate against righties, 7th highest in baseball. I'm pulling up everybody against the knuckleball specifically here, and I'm going to copy this into a sheet. And we're going to We're going to do it live. Matt Waldron. Good thing I have all of this queued up in a way that I can do this faster than most people can. Did that news just drop?
Like at the start of the show, it did.
I didn't even see it come through because I was chatting and doing other stuff. All right. 169 expected ISO against righties there. 125 expected. Oh, sorry. Against lefties there. 125 expected ISO against righties. Yeah, Matt Waldron's a much better pitcher. I know Randy Vasquez has had some decent outings of late. He's still a gas can. And Matt Waldron is #not. I just want to make sure Matt Waldron isn't like pitching on crazy short rest. No, he pitched on the 6th. He looks good, had 106 pitches there. This is a much, oh man, I'm going to play a lot of him if he's going to be low owned because he just got added.
Yeah, we should have, our data is being updated. He's in our projections. Ownership's being run right now. So we should know shortly what the ownership situation is going to be there. But until then, we won't know for sure. I know it's getting updated right now. I saw that we have, for reference, Waldron, we have projected for 15.25 fantasy points. So that puts him relative to the other 8K pitchers, about a fantasy point and a half behind Hunter Brown. And that puts him 2.5 fantasy points behind Sean Manaea, and about 3 fantasy points behind Cole Reagans.
Well, this sucks because Atlanta was my single entry team. And I mean, talking about how much more I liked Atlanta, this is a ballpark, Petco, that riddle me this, Batman. It is number 2 for home runs in all of baseball this season. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but Baseball Savant is just showing it out in the data. I mean, it is performing ridiculously well. 3-year rolling average. It's basically saying that like the number of batters going in there relative to them hitting at other ballparks, you're just seeing this crazy surge for whatever reason going to Petco. It is absurd. And it's to both sides of the plate too. Second behind Dodger Stadium, 133 number there. I don't understand it, but it is just time and time again outperformed expectations. And so Randy Vasquez as opposed to Matt Waldron, that's a huge, huge difference for me.
Is there anybody you like on the cheap end of pitching? Because none of these guys are pulling ownership. Like we said before, there's not a single pitcher more than 3% owned priced below 8K.
Not really. I'm going to rerun my stuff here with Waldron while we're going and let you know a little bit more there. There are guys that you can take random shots on, but like overall, I don't know how you feel good about anybody down in the doldrums. I normally would try to like find something here. I would say Carson Spires is probably the one that it's Miami, and anytime you go up against Miami, I mean, we talked about the teams that we're getting, or the team that we're getting to the most in large field. Good hitting weather, great ballpark, but it's still Miami. There's still going to be strikeouts up and down this lineup. And gotta say, Carson Spires, he's not good by any means, but I had a couple percent of him at least, whereas there's a lot of guys that I had flat out 0 of today.
Yeah, so for myself, this goes to show how poor the cheap, well, it's a couple things. Number one, how poor the cheap pitching options are, but then also how you have a lot of really good options in that 8K range, or somebody like Freddie Peralta isn't all that expensive. Try to guess who my most rostered pitcher is, sub 8K, Eric, and how much exposure I have to him.
Let's go with Yanni Trinos.
It is Spencer Schwellenbach in 2% of my lineups.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say 1 or 2% was going to be my guess. So, yeah, I had 4% of Carson Spires. Don't know how to say it. I have 2% of Marco Gonzalez. That's cool, but that's about it.
Yeah, and still Waters in the chat said, is Crochet really on a pitch count? Yes, he is on a pitch count today.
Yep.
Sean Jeezy asked if we had to take it. Sorry, was that Eric?
Oh, so I was going to give everybody the pick 6 cheat code because that locks, I believe, in 14 minutes. So if you're playing pick 6, now we can do the quick spiel here, mainly because there is a huge edge to playing today and playing 4, 5, 6 pick cards today specifically. First off, Gerrit Crochet is at 24.5 fantasy points. That's flat out wrong. I did the video this morning before we found out that he was going to be on a pitch count and that they were going to try to limit some of his work. They're going to try to move him. He is the most prized arm that exists on the market. I don't know if Skubal gets moved or Jack Flaherty gets moved. They would both be valuable as well. But for all intents and purposes, Gerrit Crochet has the most wins above replacement out of all of them at 3.8. He has been incredible. They should be limiting some of his pitch count here. And I thought about that when I started talking about some of his peripherals there. But you short his 24.5 fantasy points, which you probably need to get the win to have him booster that if he's only going to pitch 5 innings or be limited. And then you have 4.5 fantasy points listed for Jazz Chisholm, Brian De La Cruz, and Josh Bell, assuming that it was going to be one of the better Cincinnati pitchers. And then they kind of screwed their stuff up like a day or so ago. And they just forgot that, oh, Miami's going to be in Cincinnati. All 3 of the batters I just listed, we have double their projection listed on Stokastic, and they're perfectly stackable. 1, 3, 4 together, along with less on it. I am playing a pick 4 card, if you will, and I am jamming that combination. Less than 24.5 fantasy points for Crochet, and those 3 all together in a line, fire it up.
Yeah, and anything else do you like from pick 6? That like you said, the slate does lock soon. They are the sponsor of the show. If you guys are on DraftKings, pretty easy. You just find pick 6 at the top of the search bar there. Anything else that stands out to you on pick 6?
Yeah, so the fantasy point totals are pretty low on a couple of these guys that I think you can fire up. Marco Gonzalez just talked about having like 2% of them. He's, for all intents and purposes, terrible. Andrew Vaughn is sitting there at 4.5 fantasy points. If you're looking at building out a full pick card, I think that that's just fine. That was another guy that I kind of rotated through a couple of plays with. And then our pick 6 optimizer has a number of different spots you can fire up with it in conjunction with it. I think to get a little bit contrarian, you could try to fire up like the Sonny Gray 1.5 earned runs going more on it with a couple of the Chicago Cubs coming up against him. 1.5 is just a really, really, really low number on that side of things. And I'm not saying that he's going to get lit up by any means. I'm going to be playing Sonny Gray in DFS to some extent as well. But I do think 1.5 being a pretty low number against a Cubs team that's starting to find some form, even with Cody Bellinger on the IL. You could go with Ian Happ, 5.5 fantasy points, and say a Suzuki 6.5, and just correlate those cards. That's the real fun thing about playing MLB Pick 6, is that you can correlate a bunch of cards. Like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different games covered in the top where I'm just kind of correlating my cards together. And I'm looking for some of those contrarian ones to hit and some of the more popular ones to potentially fail, hoping some of the more popular individual plays fail. And you put all of that together, huge way to get paid off like 25, 30x on some of those big 5 and 6 pick cards. And it happens more frequently than you'd think that you get 1 or 2 of those popular plays to fall off and you have a massive pay bump.
We got a super chat here from Sean Jeezy. And I'm going to preface this right now by saying the answer is nobody, because he said if we had to take a stand on a sub 7K pitcher, who would we go with? I mean, like I said, the pitcher that I have sub 8K I have the most of is Spencer Schwellenbach, and that's literally 2% of him. He's in 3 out of 150 lineups for me. He's projected for 4% ownership, so I'm underweight to the field on him. The answer to me is nobody. If it's sub 7K, I have 2 out of 150 lineups with Kyle Hendricks as the most. I don't like any of these guys, Sean. I don't think you have to be playing this price range at all.
Agreed. Now, I'm looking at my lineups here. I just reran some stuff. I now have nobody other than Yariel Rodriguez, who's in 2% of my lineups, sub 7K.
Yeah, it is just not. It's just not a great price range. And there's so many good options in the 8K range. I don't think you have to go there.
Nope. Not only that, but like look at some of the strikeout projections and like The whole reason that we spend a lot of time with starting pitching and why we start with it in general is that it is far more predictable than the range of outcomes with hitters. We're going to be able to recommend within a tighter range and within a tighter distribution pitchers, because the strikeouts, well, they hit a certain range of outcomes quite a lot. It becomes a lot more predictable going forward. I'm not saying there aren't outliers on every single slate, because there are. I'm sure somebody down here is going to find a decent outing. Good luck, though, combining it with another high upside arm and then 8 batters that perform well. That's why we see condensed chalk at the top on some of these slates. And this is a really good one to be peppering 8K and more.
Anything else you want to add about pitching?
I love Matt Waldron. I love it. I'm going to be playing a lot more Matt Waldron. I'm still going to get to some Atlanta Braves because of the ballpark, but 8,600. I still like Cole Reagans more. I still think Hunter Brown is a really solid option against Texas still, and I'm probably going to be over the field at 18%, but we just updated it for 8.2%. He's got some positive leverage there. We've got him around a 10% top 2 percentage. I am a little bit higher on that. And Matt Waldron, anytime you just randomly see a knuckleballer that you weren't expecting that day, I don't know, it feels like it could be a little bit jarring. You might run into some extra Ks here. This Atlanta team strikes out a lot against them, 25% clip, talked about that earlier. Fire up a little bit of Matt Waldron. Plus, the ownership is going to be really hard to pin down because it's not like we've been able to update it all day with information.
All right, let's look. Oh, actually, I wanted to check to see the projected ownership on Waldron, because I think that will be updated now. Let's see.
8.2.
Yeah. What did that do to other people's ownership as well?
So he's kept Cole Reagans.
Interesting. So with the inclusion of Matt Waldron, the removal of Randy Vasquez, and then just also other general projection updates, Cole Reagans has become way more he's now nearly 40% owned, Cole Reagans. And then you got Waldron at 8% owned. Manaya's down to 33%, Peralta 31%. Joe Ryan's come up a little bit to 22%. And then Garrett Crochet, his projected ownership has started to come down as well. So I was kind of hoping he would remain chalky a little bit, Garrett Crochet, considering the pitch count, but it seems like the field is a little bit more hip to that now. But yeah, Sean Manaea has come down in ownership. Reagan's now nearly 40% owned, Eric.
Is Cal Raleigh not in the there he is. Yeah, he's third. Okay. It was just cut off on my sheet. I was like, there's no way that they're going to bench a dude with like 4 homers in the last 3 days. That would be absurd.
We got a super chat, not a super chat, a question from Kareem in the Discord channel. He wants to know, how many innings do we think Gerrit Cole pitches? It's hard to say because he's just not pitched all that well.
Yeah, I would say 5. I mean, if you set the line at like 15.5, I'd still have to take more, even though he hasn't gotten to that mark all season. I got to say that's like that was the one weather spot too to be paying attention to from earlier. I don't know if that's still maintained. I haven't looked at the weather there. Baltimore. Yeah, there's some interesting weather there. That's for sure. I'm probably going to be just kind of staying away from like the entire game in general, but not because I'm like making a conscious choice for it. Gerrit Cole's just not been good.
I'm going to guess 6 innings.
Yep. 6 innings would be a good guess.
Like more likely than not, he pitches okay, but we also haven't seen him go past 5 innings yet. So it's hard for me to say the Yankees will stretch him to 7. I'll say 6, Kareem, but also not something I'm really dying to play in a DFS today. Let's go ahead and look at the FanDuel side of things, where over on FanDuel, Eric, we have the most popular pitcher is Freddie Peralta. He is 22% owned against the Washington Nationals. Then we got Reagan's is 17% owned against the Red Sox. Manaea is 14% owned against the Rockies. Joe Ryan, 13% owned against the Giants. Sonny Gray's 11% owned against the Cubs. And every other pitcher is contrarian on FanDuel. In fact, there's even only a handful of pitchers more than 1% ownership beyond these guys on FanDuel. If you're rostering one pitcher in a FanDuel GPP, which direction are you looking?
This is hard. This is kind of a hard one today. I mean, Freddie Peralta's chalk, but rightfully so. Cole Reagans is pulling a lot of ownership at 10-2 against Boston. That's a little surprising. I mean, I'd probably be looking at Hunter Brown or Matt Waldron. Playing one lineup, you know, it depends on the stack, but maybe I would be looking towards mean, Joe Ryan's pulling a ton of ownership over there. That's a little bit wild to me too. I'm going to go with Hunter Brown at 9,100, 6.1% ownership. Matt Waldron getting up there in terms of ownership. So he's nearly identical there at $1,000 less. So probably wouldn't be doing that one. I'll go Hunter Brown. How about you?
Yeah, Sean Manaea for me at modest ownership. The $8,800 price tag, I know it looks like a lot for Sean Manaea, but it's cheaper than most of these other top starting pitchers. And you also get a little bit of an ownership discount on him on FanDuel relative to DraftKings. So give me Sean Manaea, $8,800, great matchup against the Rockies, 13.7% owned as well. That's fairly modest for FanDuel purposes there. So Sean Manaea, that is going to be my guy. For cash games, though, just roll out Freddie Peralta for FanDuel cash. All right, let's see if there was any other questions. Nope. Looks like we are all caught up on pitching questions. So let's look at the lineup generator, Jordan. If you wouldn't mind, pull that up right now. And if you guys do want to sign up for the lineup generator, link below in the YouTube description box. Less than $15. We got player projections, ownership projections here. It builds lineups for you, gets you access to our Discord channel. It's going to ask us questions on shows or any point in time over the course of the day. Let's go all stack types, and that's balanced today, Eric. Is that good with you?
Yep, balance sounds fun.
All right, balanced it is. Don't lock anything in, and let's see what everything ends up looking like. Any guesses? What do you think the most rostered offense will be?
Miami.
It's a pretty good guess because we got Jazz Chisholm and half. Yeah, we got the, oh my God, Jordan, you're spazzing there. Jazz Chisholm in 69% of lineups. Jake Burger's our next most rostered hitter. And then at pitcher, Sonny Gray, 1, Freddie Peralta, not far behind. Then you see Cole Reagan, Sean Manaea. So kind of interesting in these lineups, Eric. And it has a lot to do with the amount of Marlins we're getting to. It gave us more salary to play with. So as a result, we got overweight to the field on Sonny Gray and Freddie Peralta, and then came in a little bit underweight to the field on Cole Reagans and Sean Manaea. Not significantly underweight to these two guys, but a little bit underweight as we prioritize the Miami Marlins. The Marlins are also currently my most stacked team. I'm doing one more run of Sims right here to get everything caught up for the latest ownership and Matt Waldron pitching and whatnot. But I presume that I'm still going to have the Marlins as my most rostered team. Are they going to be your most exposed team in large field GPPs?
Yes, they are. They are very, very cheap. Again, talked about pick six. One other play to throw out 1 minute before lock, but it'll be half an hour. You can mix it around. Malloy is batting second today. His hits are like minus 175 at Sportsbook. So it makes a lot of sense to add him to some cards as well. Wanted to throw him out there. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking at across the board. I mean, the Marlins just so cheap relative to their chance of success here in a small ballpark. A lot of home run potential, even in lineups where I'm not stacking them. I'm just getting to so much Jazz Chisholm, Jesus Sanchez. I mean, these guys are in a great spot.
Yeah, I've got the Marlins as my most rostered team at the moment. And I don't have any team in more than 20% of my lineup. So it's not like I have any massive stands anywhere. But considering there aren't cheap pitchers we like, what does that mean? It means we have to roster some cheap offenses, right? There's no way we could just say that we want to roster all the most expensive pitchers and the most expensive offenses. And my favorite cheap offense is the Miami Marlins. They're projected to pull some ownership. Nothing crazy, though, just under 10% as a team. And they have by far the highest top value odds. We have them with a north of 20% chance to be the top value stack on the slate. You make a 5-man Marlins stack or even a 3-man secondary Marlins stack, it enables you to pay whatever you want at pitcher, and your other offense also as a secondary stack gets filled in pretty easily as well. So I'm going to be heavy on the Marlins today. But for single entry, Eric, I know you had said the Atlanta Braves before. What about now that we no longer have Randy Vasquez pitching for the Padres? Does that force you to pivot?
Yeah, I'm not going to play them against Waldron in single entry. So yeah, I'm going to be pivoting to something. What that something is, I still don't know. I'm open to recommendations, but I had the Braves in it this morning. I had the Braves in it this afternoon, and I had the Braves in it as we led up into this show while we were on this show. And now I definitely don't want to play the Braves in single entry against Waldron.
Yeah. So I do want to see what some of my lineups look like when everything is updated on this next Sims run. I can tell you that if I was picking everything out of the run of lineups I just did, I would actually be going to the Toronto Blue Jays in Arizona. Nice hitters park. Ryan Nelson's on the mound. Ryan Nelson's terrible. So that's definitely a direction that I would like to go. Where are the Marlins? Yeah, Marlins 9% owned.
Mm-hmm.
They've come down a little bit from earlier. But yeah, I would say that if I was making my lineup right now with my old set of Sims run, it would be the Toronto Blue Jays.
I love the Toronto Blue Jays today. Bet the Toronto Blue Jays will be putting that into Discord here as well for tonight. I am very excited about them.
Anything else that stands out to you about these lineups here? Do you have any issue with the 31% Mania or 33% Cole Reagans?
No, I don't have really any issue with it. I have more on Reagan still. So that's probably not going to be changing at any point in time. I like these lineups. I'm looking through them. I mean, Miami, Mania. There is some rain, at least there in New York, where, again, I'm not going to get to 30% Mania. I generally have been shorting him to some extent on a lot of these slates where he's been popular. I think I'm going to continue to. Obviously, Colorado's a great matchup for strikeouts, but I am inclined to think that that's a little bit too much going his direction.
All right, let's build some FanDuel lineups then, Jordan. Pull up FanDuel. We'll see what we're getting to on the FanDuel side of things. And if you guys didn't see the stacks beyond the Marlins we had the most of in the lineup generator was the aforementioned Toronto Blue Jays as well as the New York Yankees. But let's see what we're getting to on FanDuel, and then we'll find some contrarian stacks that you and I like today.
Love.
Same settings, Jordan. Have you done many best ball drafts so far, Eric?
I've done a lot. Yeah, I've done a ton on Underdog. Just getting going on DK, but yeah, I've got over 100 drafts in on Underdog already. I've been playing a lot. It's just so fun. I mean, I'll pull up exactly how many I'm in here at the moment, but it's just so fun to do every night and just kind of space out. And like, even if like my wife loves Love Island and I just hate reality TV and whatever, but I want to be supportive. So I support her by best ball drafting throughout the entire episode. So it's fun.
Okay. Hey, you're present. I'm sure that's all that she really cares about.
Yep. I'm there physically.
You're in the area. You're
there
around her. You're just, who gives a shit about Love Island? You got best.
You're going to be a great husband one day, Greg. That is what I've learned just now.
FanDuel lineups here, getting to, it looks like a spread out amount of offenses here. We've got Aaron Judge at the top, our most rostered pitcher, Freddie Peralta, followed by Sonny Gray. 40% Peralta, 30% Sonny Gray. So our projections, once again, really liking Peralta and Sonny Gray in the lineup generator. I'm seeing some Mets in there, some Reds. Click on the stack exposures, Jordan, because I can't really, it's spread out, about as spread out as we've seen it the entire year. Brewers in 33% of lines, Reds 30%, Mets 30%, Yankees 28%, Arizona 23%. If you were building one FanDuel lineup for tonight, Eric, which team would you be stacking on the FanDuel side of things?
Probably going to be. God, this is
no real chalk there. Only two teams over 10% owned. Reds 10.4, Mariners 10.8. So it's really spread out over on FanDuel.
I think it's easier to say what I wouldn't play. I wouldn't play Seattle against Tyler Anderson. I wouldn't play Cincinnati against Yonny Chirinos, even though I think he's going to die. I would probably go to Milwaukee amongst the popular stacks. Jackson Rutledge has no business being in the major leagues whatsoever, but because of Milwaukee's ownership on DK, I'm probably going to get to them more there than I am over on FanDuel at this kind of ownership. I'm going to go, if I'm making one lineup, it'd be St. Louis against Kyle Hendricks.
Okay.
I think is probably where I'd end up going. Highest implied team total there, 5% ownership share. I know exactly kind of the main guys that I would want to get to. I think it's going to look pretty similar to over on DK. Kansas City looks pretty good on FanDuel too. Just ran some stuff for it over here. And Kansas City's a team that's popping a lot for me. We have Milwaukee as the number one of those stacks there. So I guess the stacks tool is in alignment with exactly what I'm looking at here. So I feel really good about that. The lineup builder is.
I'm going to stick with the Toronto Blue Jays against Ryan Nelson. I can't believe maybe I shouldn't say I can't believe, because this is, a big slate. There's a lot of potential options to be getting to. But I mean, Ryan Nelson this year has a 5.08 ERA, 4.82 expected ERA. He got hammered last year also, 5.31 ERA, 5.27 expected ERA. So we've never really seen this guy ever be a successful pitcher. He doesn't strike out anybody. 15.3% strikeout rate this year. It's 16% overall for his career. So we're getting a low-owned Toronto offense that does have a lot of power bats in it against a replacement level pitcher. Ryan Nelson's awful. So there's a lot of talent in the Toronto Blue Jays offense. I like going to them. And I mean, I would roster just about anybody against Ryan Nelson anyway. Give me a low-owned Blue Jays against Ryan Nelson.
That is just fine by me, sir.
Yeah, but once again, lots of potential directions that you could go to for stacks. Overall, like I said, my most rostered stack is the Miami Marlins. What are the other stacks that are important to your lineup builds, Eric?
The other stacks. I'm looking here at, because I just redid everything. Atlanta was such a big part of my portfolio. And so to lose that out, because I really do like Matt Waldron, it's not that I'm going to have zero Atlanta, but I've legitimately had double-digit Atlanta and was like the big stand that I had for today, a ballpark that's been playing up for power. And now to lose that out kind of changed everything that I was planning on doing here. I do like Toronto. I'm with you there. That's going to be a team that I care a lot about. I like Kansas City up against Cooper Criswell. I don't think he's a gas can by any means, but this is great hitting weather there. I think getting to some Boston on the other side against a popular Cole Reagans, something that I have to do because I have more than the field of Cole Reagans here at the moment. I think for me, it just comes down to the stacks that I'm just not playing nearly as much of the field as. I know Tyler Anderson's due for some negative regression, but he's for all intents and purposes been pretty good. Seattle comes off of 11 runs yesterday. They're chalky today. I don't love getting to those kind of spots where it's like a completely different pitcher and situation. They had no business in throwing out any of their good bullpen arms either, so they didn't. And it ended up being just fine. They had two guys eat a bulk of those innings yesterday. So a fresh bullpen coming in for the Angels, decent on the back half of that. Like their main bopper's pretty good in that direction. Seattle, I don't want to be getting to, but Arizona as well up against Yariel Rodriguez. He's been a lot better for sure, but you brought it up before. Good hitting ballpark, lots of space out there. Doubles in the gap, keep the line moving. 6.2% ownership share of them. I have 8% of Arizona. And St. Louis, I like them over on DraftKings as well here, a team that I'm getting over the field on.
Question, not really a question, more of a comment from Woody in the chat. Woody says, Eric, you want to make sure I told you that you look like a prep kid who just got out of class. Your outfit does give off big, how are you doing, fellow kids energy, Steve Buscemi today.
Thank you so much. I played golf this morning. My wife is starting to get into golf, and so I'm supporting her, and went out and we hit golf balls together and had breakfast and hung out a little bit, the two of us, after I did my recordings this morning. And yeah, so she's getting into golf, but didn't have any time to change. I had to get right to work on stuff because I had Kyle's show before this, and now jumped on, started doing all my DFS stuff after the fact. And yeah, in order to preserve, I basically I look ridiculous. I'm very aware of that. Thank you.
I mean, you just look like you are a prep kid who just got out of class. Nothing wrong with that.
Thank you, everybody. I love you.
Nothing wrong with that.
Smash
you look
the
like
like
the
button.
richest kid in Iowa.
Thanks,
What do we
pal.
got from chat? Nothing else. Nothing else in chat. Of all the chalky pitchers, Eric, are you willing to stack against any of them, whether it's Cole Reagans, Sean Manaea, Freddie Peralta? Are you looking to get leverage stacking against any of those popular pitchers?
Yeah, it's got to be Cole Reagans, right? Boston's the best offense, and I mean, they go Ref Snyder up top here, doing exactly what they should do, getting Hamilton further down the lineup. You have stolen base upside like throughout as well. It's a very scary matchup, but the upside is definitely there from a strikeout perspective for Reagan. So I think it's a classic play both sides of a kind of thing. I will definitely be over on Boston when it's all said and done.
I mean, you can make a case for Boston. You could also make a case for Colorado, just because Sean Manaea is good, but not great. I think we would all agree that of the three pitchers that are chalky today, the least talented of them is Sean Manaea. But I don't really love any of these teams for leverage in particular. All things being considered, I'm going to agree with you and say the Boston Red Sox, just because they are the best overall offense. You never know what teams are going to be doing heading into the All-Star break also. Maybe they do want to be cautious with pitchers, give them a little bit of extra, rest heading into the break, especially if they are pitchers who are potentially going to be pitching in the All-Star game. Not that I think that's going to be the scenario, but I mean, the Red Sox offense, they've put up a lot of big games over the course of the last couple of weeks. They're a much more potent offense than the Colorado Rockies or the Washington Nationals, which more or less is the crux of what your point was. If I want to play one of these teams that's contrarian that gives us leverage, it kind of is the Boston Red Sox by default.
Yep, that's the way I look at it.
Anything else you want to add about stacks on the slate? Any team that we haven't mentioned that's important to you, or a crazy contrarian squad?
No, I really do like the under of that Seattle LA game. I've been just staring at it all day long. So I'm not going to be going to any bats there. Toronto, Arizona, kind of the inverse, where I do like the runs in that one, as do you. It's just a bummer to lose Atlanta there a little bit. Seems as though it's going to like a little bit of Minnesota for me too. Like a 4.1 implied run total here for Minnesota in San Francisco. Not the best ballpark for hitting, to say the absolute very least, but something has to be said for how good the Twins have been over the course of the last month, pretty much all season long now. We've seen unbelievable production from them. They are second in WRC plus against lefties now on the season, 126. Nobody's going to play them because of the ballpark. I have 4% of them. Again, it is a massive slate, so 4% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot relative to the field, it would appear.
If you've refreshed our top stacks tool, the team with the highest projected odds heading into lock, being the top scoring team, and you'd mentioned them a little bit before, it's the Kansas City Royals. And this shows how spread out the slate is. It's the Kansas City Royals with a 7.3% chance to be the top scoring team. That's the only team above 7%. Then you got the Reds at 7%, the Yankees at 7%, the Mets at 6.6%. It really is a slate where I think you want to be a little bit spread out as far as your offenses are concerned. This is the full list of teams that now I have my lineups finished. These are all of the teams I have more than 10% exposure to, Eric. The Marlins, the Blue Jays, the Mariners, and the Royals. Just those four. That's it. And then everything else I have 6% or less of.
That's pretty wild. Again, it's a very spread out slate, but I do like some of these contrarian evening slates, or evening teams, if you will. I kind of touched on that earlier, where you see them having some of the higher positive ROIs at the end of the night. There's kind of a reason for that. It seems as though it's kind of skewed more towards these Northeast ballparks. I'm okay with that. I like some of these Northeast ballparks, specifically Miami today. I like Kansas City today, but yeah, I'm with you where I'm more spread out today than most.
All right, so let's do our home run picks, and then we've got some time off before we head to the All-Star break. I'm going out to dinner. It's my brother's birthday today.
Nice.
Had lots of birthdays this week. 2 brothers' birthdays. Had one of my best friends' birthdays. So doing the cap final birthday of the week for me to celebrate. Who's going to help us bring it in, Eric? Who homers today? Who's the dong of the night?
So I'm trying to decide if I want to go to my contrarian one. You know, let's just do this one. Jesus Sanchez. I mean, the guy has just unbelievable power against righties, and it cannot be emphasized enough what kind of a ballpark upgrade this is for these Miami Marlins. You get lefty power with Jazz Chisholm and with Josh Bell, switch hitter, I suppose. 152 expected ISO, not terrible. But Jesus Sanchez has a 256 expected ISO against right-handed pitching this season. This is a ridiculous spot for him. I love him batting 5th for the Marlins. He goes yard.
A lot of my most rostered individual hitters are Marlins players. Let's see if I go outside of the Marlins. You know what? I'll go back to somebody who I'm overweight to again today. Didn't homer yesterday, but the Mariners stacks came through for us. Julio Rodriguez. I think Julio is back. He didn't homer yesterday, but he did have a few hits. He ended up with like 12 or 14 fantasy points or something yesterday. I think we're going to see a big second half of the season for Julio Rodriguez and the Mariners offense, which it wasn't as bad as it seemed the first half of the season. I mean, they're in first place in the AL West. They just struck out a lot, so we're always stacking against them in DFS. Julio Rodriguez, that's my home run pick. We're going to martingale. Just going to keep going with Julio Rodriguez until he actually homers. Chat, let's see what we got for chat's homers here. Blake Moore is going with Mark Ventos. Oh, shout out to Taste the Skittles. He said, dang, it's his birthday too. It's everybody's birthday today. Happy birthday to Taste the Skittles.
Mine.
Mark Vientos, that is the home run pick from Blake Moore. Nolan Gorman from Trip. We got Ricardo Nelson saying Byron Buxton. Sean V going with Jesus Sanchez. EMAC has got Jazz Chisholm today. Then we've got Taco going with Jock Peterson and Corbin Carroll. Forrest has got oh, never mind. They just said Dodgers down 2 runs. I thought it was a home run pick from the Dodgers. Didn't read the entire thing first. Casey Leatherwood. Casey going with the normal 2 home run picks from Casey. So Salvador Perez as well as Josh Smith. Anthony Harris going with Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Then we've got Adolis Garcia from Aaron Hines. We've got Julio Rodriguez as well from Flex. We got Vinny Pasquantino from Andy Melman. We've got Almost Made is going with who's, I'm trying to remember who is Malukar. I saw you delete Teoscar Hernandez. You're sticking with it. I don't care if the game's already in play. You're sticking with it. Pete Alonso is the pick from Almost Made. Took me a second to remember who the polar bear is. Seager from Okizi. And then we've got Jazzy Faye is going with Gunnar Henderson. Luis Robert from Flex. We got Paul Goldschmidt from Timmy Lee. Sean V saying he didn't pick Sanchez. I thought he did. Did he not say Sanchez? Sean V, you're stop. I'm saying you pick Sanchez.
You're a damn dirty liar.
You said Jesus Dirty Sanchez.
Yeah, you're a piece of shit. Shut up.
I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say he picked Jesus Sanchez. He said Jesus.
I love you,
Sanchez.
Sean. I was kidding.
Pick, though.
Yeah,
Nolan Arenado from Chad Wiseman. We got Matt Olson from Envious. We got Anthony Volpe from Francisco Rubio. And that is going to do it for us. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the All-Star break. Eric and I will be back on Friday. Peace out, guys. Have a good one.